The Devils have won 3 of their last 4 games, and they recently defeated the Wild by a score of 3-2 in a shootout at the Prudential Center. They are inching their way closer to clinching a playoff spot. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. I got some sad news to share with you guys. This is my final episode. Yeah, this is the end. I'm going to be following my dreams and moving to a small town in Texas, and I'm going to work at a rodeo. That's where I belong. April Fool's Day, everybody. This is not the end of Locked On Devils. We got so much to talk about. The New Jersey Devils defeated the Minnesota Wild by a score of 3-2 in a shootout. They secured the 2 points, and their playoff odds have increased to 99.8%. Oh, so close to clinching a playoff spot, barring a catastrophic meltdown and other circumstances that are unlikely to happen. I think it's safe to assume that playoff hockey is returning to New Jersey. On today's episode, in the first segment, I will share my main takeaways from the game. Then in the second segment, I will highlight some players that caught my eye and also name my personal 3 stars of the game. And then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game episode recap, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. Now, before I get into my main takeaways, I first want to show my appreciation toward Marc-Andre Fleury, also known as the Flower. First overall pick by the Penguins in 2003, 5-time All-Star Game participant, 3-time Stanley Cup champion, 2021 Vezina Trophy winner. Took him a good while to finally get a Vezina to his trophy case, but I think it's safe to say that Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be dearly missed. The ultimate professional, a stand-up guy based on what I've heard. And I don't think there's much discussion. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He did not play in this game. He dropped 4 of his last 5 outings, and the Minnesota Wild are doing whatever it takes to secure themselves points to try to get themselves into the playoffs. And with how hot the St. Louis Blues have been, it's definitely made things a little tougher. But going back to Marc-Andre Fleury, the sport of hockey will dearly miss him. And I have no doubt in the back of my mind that a lot of French media, they're going to be pursuing him to try to get him on TV. He originally hails from Quebec, and he seems like a very stand-up person, very entertaining personality as well. I'm excited to see what the future holds for Marc-Andre Fleury. So just wanted to tip my cap to the Flower and everything he's done in hockey. All right, now we got a game to break down. This was the back end of a home-and-home series. The Devils played the Wild a few days ago, but that battle took place in Minnesota. Now, this particular matchup took place at the Prudential Center. And I said it in the previous post-game recap episode. I was thoroughly entertained with the game because it was a playoff-like atmosphere. It was physical. The Devils were dominant from start to finish. They put their foot on the gas pedal and they redeemed themselves after getting shut out by the Jets the night prior. Back end of a back-to-back, never easy to overcome, but the Devils were able to do so. And remember, the Wild are a desperate team as well. They're trying to generate as many points as they potentially can. This game was a little different because the Devils had to work with what they were being given. Luke Hughes got the scoring started for the Devils in the first period, but that's what the Devils were working with for most of the game, which was a 1-0 lead. I was actually listening to Matt and Chico on the radio, and Chico brought this up, which is the Wild were desperate in the third period to try to get a goal, because if the Devils scored another goal and went up 2-0, you could pretty much put the game to rest, because Jacob Markstrom, we're going to talk more about him in the second segment, he was definitely on his game, and you're definitely seeing the improvement ever since returning from injury. Similar to what happened on Saturday, you didn't see any scoring in the second period. In fact, the biggest talking point in the second period was Brian Dumoulin getting a questionable holding call on Marcus Foligno. Everyone was just confused, and I was just like, no, 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 no. He did not hold Foligno. Foligno tripped up on his own skates, and unfortunately, Dumoulin is taking the fall. That was really the only talking point. It didn't come back to bite the Devils, and I'm sure everyone pretty much forgot about it after it was over, but just wanted to bring it into the light. The third period was interesting because Vinny Hinostroza, somewhat early into the period, he got the equalizer goal. And it took a weird redirect right in front of Markstrom. I believe the shot initially came from Middleton, and it looked to be a direct strike to Markstrom. It was going to go into his chest protector, and he was going to make the routine save. But once again, Hinostroza at the last possible second angled the puck, and Markstrom just lost sight of it momentarily. I don't really put the blame on Markstrom all that much, but here's something else that happened that was quite compelling. Brett Pesce scored, or so we thought. The puck was on Gustafsson's back, and there wasn't enough evidence that it had crossed the line, and the referees were taking a minute to look back on it. Just when you thought the Devils caught a break and regained their lead, it was taken away from them. But the captain, Nico Hischier, continuing to rack up the goals this year, was able to put the Devils up 2-1. And it seemed like the Devils were going to walk away with the 1-goal victory. It was an entertaining game, working with what they were being given, until Matt Boldy happened. Now, here's the thing. There was only a few minutes remaining in the period, and the Wild were pressing the Devils hard. I would say the third period was the Wild's best effort. I don't really blame Markstrom for that goal either, because here's what happened. Brendan Dillon, not good stick work, turned the puck over, and Matt Boldy had a point-blank shot on Markstrom, and that was his 100th goal with the Wild. And before you know it, it's a tie game, 2-0. I'm just like, okay, the Devils need to send this into OT, and Luke Hughes made sure of it. I'm going to talk more about Luke Hughes' decision in the second segment, because it did catch a lot of flack on social media. But the game goes into overtime, and here's another questionable call. Hischier gets control of the puck. Before it leaves the Devils' attacking end, he feeds it to Cotter, and Cotter scores the game-winning goal in overtime. Devils secure themselves to 2 points. The game is over. Everybody's going home happy. Not so fast. There was a dispute up in the control room. Referees reviewing it to see if Hischier was offsides. Just looking at it from the naked eye in real time, it didn't look to be offsides. I can understand why the referees wouldn't call it in that circumstance, but looking at the replay meticulously and oh so close, it was offsides by, I kid you not, half an inch, if that. At most, an inch. It was that damn close. But it was the correct call, I guess. I don't really know. It was controversial. Games like this are very important for the Wild, because the difference between 1 point or 2 points is vital down the stretch. So you got to make sure that every call is perfect, humanly possible. Everyone is free to disagree, but the Devils did end up winning. They actually dominated the shootout thanks to Paul Cotter and Jesper Bratt. It was pretty incredible that the Devils, who usually struggle in the shootout, were able to come out on top. They did not have a home shootout win this season, and now was the perfect time to pick it up. Devils walk away with 2 points. They sweep the home and home series. It was an entertaining game. I loved what I saw from Jacob Markstrom. I love what I saw from Luke Hughes. Speaking of which, we're going to talk about some players that caught my eye momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. My bracket is so busted because I picked Alabama to win the entire thing, and now I'm a little sad. But you don't have to be. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, let's name some players that caught my eye. I only have one honorable mention, and this might be controversial, but the reason I am giving Nico Hischier an honorable mention is because I know Nico is going to become one of my 3 stars in the not so distant future. He has really stepped up his game when it matters most. And that goal he had in the third period, it was clutch. It was supposed to be the game-winning goal. Unfortunately, like I told you, Dylan had a bit of a blunder to give Boldy the equalizer late in the third period, but I'm not going to address that again. Let's just focus on Nico Hischier. 34 goals this season for Nico. Said it before. Everything else is just gravy for Nico when it comes to goals. He's already surpassed his career high, and he continues to just be incredible with his point production. So credit to the captain for coming up clutch and just doing whatever it took to help the Devils win. And him being offsides in overtime, I don't know. I'm still unsure about that one, but I get it. You got to try to be as perfect as you possibly can, but he still looked good. I'm not going to take that away from him. The reason I am making Paul Cotter my 3rd star is because I need to give Paul Cotter a lot of credit. I talked about him in the previous episode. He was a healthy scratch on March 9th, and ever since then, he has scored 3 goals, and he is now the record holder for most hits in a single Devils season. He's been incredible in more ways than one. I know his scoring is sporadic, but he's looked really good the last few weeks. And if the shootout was any proof, he has some serious tricks up his sleeve. He has a lot of potential. I would say he still needs to work on being more consistent. Like I said, him being scratched a few weeks ago has really seemed to awaken the beast a little bit. Paul Cotter really should have gotten the game-winning goal in overtime, but we know the circumstances. I got to give Paul Cotter some credit for what he's been able to do the last few outings, and he's not really going to be one of my 3 stars all that often, so I just wanted to throw a bone to him in a way. My 2nd star goes to Jacob Markstrom. I was listening to the radio feed, and Matt and Chico were talking about how Jacob Markstrom was looking really sharp in this particular matchup. Chico gave the example of how Markstrom makes the save and he kicks it over into the corner. He knows where to position himself. He's been flowing really well. As we all know, it's been a bit of a struggle for Markstrom ever since he returned from injury, but Sheldon Keefe was quoted to say post-game that Markstrom is pretty much back. Like, this was one of his best outings. He saw 29 shots. He made 27 saves, which gave him a save percentage of .931. This is the Jacob Markstrom I like to see, and this is the Jacob Markstrom that the Devils need going down the stretch. Devils are in a comfortable position right now to clinch a playoff spot. but they still got some work to do. Similar to a lot of his teammates, it seems like Markstrom is stepping up his game at the right possible time. My first star goes to Luke Hughes, a multi-point performance from Luke. He scored the opening goal in the first period, and I want to give him a lot of credit for the Nico Hischier goal. Yes, he got the secondary assist, but that play does not happen if he didn't poke the puck away. He got control of it, dished it over to Nason. Nason fed it quickly over to Hischier, went back door, and scored, giving the Devils a 2-1 lead in the third period. Luke Hughes has really stepped up his game in more ways than one. Here's a fun fact for you. Ever since March 2nd, the day Jack Hughes got injured, Luke Hughes now has 15 points, 2 goals, 13 assists in 14 games played. He's coming up big in wake of his brother's absence. And I think everybody said that Luke Hughes needs to be one of the players that the Devils rely on going down the stretch. Now, I talked about the good for Luke Hughes, but let's talk about some controversy because Luke Hughes held the puck in the trapezoid below the net of Markstrom when there was about 30 seconds remaining in regulation to make sure that the Devils at least walked away with a point because the game was tied 2-2. And since he held it, regulation is over, triple zeros hit the board, game's going into overtime. Devils walk away with at least 1 point. I saw the backlash that he was getting on social media. I don't know what my audience thinks of it, but here's my personal opinion. Luke Hughes did what he had to do because what's something I've been saying on this show? You can't waste points. And I think the Devils were kind of getting flashbacks to some games in which they had the lead, they blew it, and they walk away with nothing. I'm thinking back to that game against the Flames in which the Devils were leading going into the third period and they blew it. They had a complete meltdown. You can't waste points. And you can think what you want to think about that particular play, but no one got injured. It's not illegal. No one got hurt. I think in that sort of circumstance, he did the smart thing. Make sure that you walk away with at least something because, like I said, the Wild were pressing the Devils hard in the third period, especially late. Just tightrope out of it, reset in overtime. I get that people didn't like it. I think people were actually booing the Devils late in the third period, but I have no problem with it. Take it however you want to take it. No one got injured. No one got hurt. It's not illegal. I'd say you made the smart conservative move. That's just my thought on the subject. But Luke Hughes still remains my first star of the game because he has really racked up the points when the Devils needed it. And he's picking up right where his brother left off. All right, we're going to compare stats and give the Devils a letter grade momentarily. But before I continue, let me tell you guys about 5-Hour Energy. I actually love 5-Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. And if you're feeling the lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. When I'm on a long car ride, I need 2 things: my podcast playlist and a 5-Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Okay, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. Shots on goal differential, 29-28 in favor of the Wild. They generated most of their shots in the third period. Luckily, the Devils were able to keep them at bay for the most part. If it wasn't for the Brendan Dillon mishap late in the third period, the Devils would have won in regulation. Wild also got more shots in the overtime period, 3-1 compared to the Devils. But you know what? I'm not complaining. Devils won in a shootout. Power plays. Devils were 0 for 2. Wild were 0 for 2. Hits, 25-23 in favor of the Wild. Giveaways, 23-13 in favor of the Devils. Takeaways, 5-3 in favor of the Wild. Block shots, 18-13 in favor of the Wild. Time spent in the penalty box, 4 apiece. If I had to give the Devils a letter grade, I was actually talking to Joseph Stanislaw, aka Jersey Joe, who's a colleague of mine over at Pucks and Pitchforks about the matter. He was in attendance for the game, and he and I had similar notes. Like, he sent me his personal 3 stars of the game, and he sent his own letter grade. He said that he would give the Devils an A-. Usually, if the Devils win in overtime or have to send it into a shootout and they still end up winning, I don't usually give them an A. But Joe did bring up an interesting point, saying that if it weren't for some of the bad calls from the referees, then maybe the score wouldn't be as close as it was. Well, I'm not really a big fan of blaming referees. That's just me. But you know, Joe and I have those discussions all the time, but I will agree with them about this. I will give the Devils an A- because they did fight hard and they're continuing to show that they are a playoff team. They were working with what they were being given. And I don't really blame Jacob Markstrom for the goals that were allowed. I think he was really strong in between the pipes, and his head coach talked about it post game. Sheldon Keefe had nothing but high praise for him. Devils were working with what they were being given. And I think that's the epitome of a playoff team, which is, what do you do when offense is sometimes tough to come by? Can you hold on to a 1-0 lead? And for the most part, the Devils did. So I'll give them an A-. I agree with Joe on that sort of stance. But let me know your thoughts. What did you think of this outing from Jacob Markstrom? What did you think of some of the questionable calls from the officials? Was Nico Hischier offsides? Should that goal have counted for Brett Pesce? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.